Carney's campaign promises now spark economic fears nationwide. Prime Minister Mark Carney's early months in office are proving far more challenging than anticipated. After a surprise win in the April 28 snap election, Carney entered the role with a polished resume, international credentials, and a campaign full of ambitious promises aimed at resetting the country's direction. His message of smart climate policy, expanded healthcare, and responsible economic management struck a chord with voters exhausted by years of political stagnation. But now, just weeks into his tenure, the optimism is fading. Mounting fiscal concerns, conflicting policy signals, and growing doubts about Carney's ability to deliver on his promises have Canadians on edge, wondering if they've bought into a vision that's already coming apart at the seams. At the center of growing anxiety is a federal budget shortfall that appears to be spiraling out of control. With economic growth slowing and revenues weakening, early projections show the national deficit could exceed $92 billion unless significant cuts are made. Carney's campaign had leaned heavily on broad-based social investments, rolling out national dental care, implementing universal pharmacare, and expanding housing benefits. But the funding mechanisms originally proposed have either been paused, rolled back, or scrapped altogether. The carbon tax expansion was halted under political pressure, the digital services tax was pulled due to international pushback, and promised adjustments to capital gains taxation were reversed after market volatility spooked investors. As a result, the entire financial framework of Carney's platform is starting to unravel. This fiscal reality has triggered warnings from across the public sector. Major unions have issued statements suggesting that critical services, such as passport processing, tax assistance, and employment programs, may be delayed or degraded if Carney's government follows through with internal spending cuts. In some departments, analysts estimate that operating expenditures could be slashed by nearly a quarter, a level of austerity not seen in recent Canadian history. For everyday citizens, this doesn't just mean inconvenience. It means slower access to services, reduced public sector support, and growing uncertainty around the reliability of the federal government itself. The Liberals, who campaigned on compassion and continuity, now face the prospect of managing an aggressive financial downsizing plan that could directly affect millions of Canadians. The political irony is hard to ignore. During the campaign, the Liberals vigorously attacked Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives for suggesting that public service cuts were necessary to balance the budget. Carney and his team painted those proposals as reckless, cold, and dangerous. Yet now, in a twist few anticipated, the Prime Minister finds himself being accused of the very same thing. Poilievre has wasted no time pointing out the hypocrisy, arguing that Carney's numbers never made sense to begin with and that the current turmoil was entirely predictable. In Parliament and across the media, Poilievre continues to hammer Carney on what he calls economic theater, performative policy announcements with no real plan behind them. The opposition leader's message is gaining traction, especially among working-class voters who feel increasingly squeezed by rising costs and stagnant wages. Meanwhile, Carney's position on climate policy, a cornerstone of his campaign, has shifted dramatically. Initially heralded as the man to bring serious economic discipline to Canada's net-zero transition, Carney has since pulled back from several green commitments. His government's decision to pause further carbon tax hikes stunned environmental organizations, many of whom had supported the Liberals as the only viable party with a robust climate plan. At the same time, Carney has signaled support for increased fossil fuel production, arguing that energy exports are vital to Canada's economic recovery. This about-face has alienated younger voters and climate activists who feel betrayed by what they see as politically convenient environmentalism. For a leader who once claimed climate credibility as a defining trait, the reversal is not just controversial, it's deeply personal to many of his former supporters. Beyond Canada's borders, Carney's effectiveness as a global statesman is also being called into question. He arrived on the world stage with fanfare, bolstered by his past leadership roles at the Bank of Canada and Bank of England. Many expected him to bring international gravitas to Canada's trade negotiations and multilateral agreements. Yet so far, his performance at summits and bilateral meetings has underwhelmed. Carney's failure to deliver concrete results on key trade deals, particularly on carbon border adjustment mechanisms, has drawn criticism from allies and skeptics alike. With a July 21st deadline looming for a major trade pact, pressure is mounting for the Prime Minister to prove he can translate his reputation into results. If he fails to secure a deal, it could permanently damage his credibility on the global stage. Domestically, Carney's inability to present a federal budget before Parliament's summer recess has added to the frustration. Without detailed fiscal numbers, Canadians have no way of evaluating how the government plans to manage competing priorities: healthcare expansion, defense spending, climate action, and debt control, without triggering cuts or tax increases. The delay is viewed by many as an early sign of dysfunction. For a prime minister who ran on transparency and competence, failing to deliver a basic roadmap this far into his mandate sends the wrong message. It signals uncertainty, disorganization, or worse, an unwillingness to confront hard financial truths until the political cost becomes unavoidable. Some of Carney's defenders argue that he's simply reacting to an extraordinarily difficult situation. Canada, like many countries, is navigating the aftermath of a global pandemic, geopolitical instability, and economic disruptions from supply chain shifts and inflationary cycles. In that context, they say, Carney's measured tone and cautious approach should be praised rather than condemned. They point to his efforts to shield middle-income earners from new tax burdens, his commitment to maintaining key social programs, and his steady leadership style as signs of responsible governance. But even among these voices, there is growing unease about whether the Prime Minister truly grasps the urgency of the moment, or is simply hoping the public's frustration fades before the fall budget is released. Carney has stepped up public appearances in recent weeks, attempting to calm nerves and project control. He's emphasized that the coming budget will contain a credible path to fiscal balance and has promised that no Canadian will be left behind. But this assurance is starting to ring hollow for many voters, especially as inflation continues to erode purchasing power and interest rates keep housing prices out of reach. His once loyal base of urban professionals and younger progressives is showing signs of disillusionment, while rural and working-class communities feel more alienated than ever. The growing divide between political rhetoric and lived experience is creating a deep undercurrent of dissatisfaction.